You got me. Well, hey there, guys. I'm Axel the Beast, and this is the Curiosity Shop, the ZeldaDungeon.net video mailbag where I answer your Zelda questions. Now, this is the last week of the mailbag intro contest, so I know I keep talking about it, but check out the link in the description for the rules and whatnot, and this is your last chance to enter it before basically the mailbag next week. But I also have not shaven this week. I know it's offensive, but hopefully we can get past that this week, and you know, I'll make sure it doesn't happen. It's gonna happen again. I'm sorry, guys. Anyway, first question comes from Gaporaowl70, sorry, who asks, what is your favorite dungeon in Skyward Sword, and what is your favorite dungeon in all of Zelda, and why? Big question. My favorite dungeon in Skyward Sword is the Lanayru mining facility, just because I thought it was like a really long, really complicated, puzzle-filled dungeon with a lot of interesting stuff to do. And my favorite dungeon of the series doesn't correspond to what I think is the best dungeon, which is the Forest Temple in Ocarina of Time. But my favorite one is the Stone Tower Temple in Majora's Mask, just because I love the ideas, I love the themes. It's very challenging, it's a little confusingly designed, but it's just a lot of fun. I just love the idea behind it, and I think it's great. Be sure to tell me yours, though. Vati18 asks, what Zelda game do you think had the best side characters? My personal favorites are the side characters from the Wind Waker. They all looked like new faces, and they all had different opinions on things. Well, it sort of depends on what the criteria is, because, you know, like, in terms of my favorites, I like the ones in Majora's Mask a lot because they had so much development, and they just, like, felt like real people, really having their own lives. I think in another way I like Skyward Swords a lot because I really liked the characters in that game. You know, there isn't a Zelda game, really, where I don't like any of the characters. I mean, I think I liked a lot of the ones in Spirit Tracks as well, especially when or Spirit Tracks and Phantom Hourglass, especially considering characters like the Anuki. And just, those are games where there's a lot of cleverness in the dialogue and a lot of personality of the characters. So those would be good candidates. So most of the modern ones, I guess, the most recent ones, have some of my favorite side characters. But, you know, Majora's Mask is the one that executes it the best. It's not something where I can really pick a favorite too well, but, you know, give me your guys's. Blatantly Obvious asks, if you could add one completely original item or weapon to the next Zelda game, what would it be? Well, you know, there's a lot of ideas of things I'd do, and a lot of spins on similar items that we've had in the past. One thing I'm crazy about seeing more of is a lantern, but if I was to, like, come up with a completely original idea, I'd come up with any kind of object that actually allowed you to, like, control the monsters. I love monster collection or monster control or playing as monster aspects in games, and I think the idea of being able to use the enemies in an area as an environmental puzzle, in a sense, would be fascinating. Use their powers and use it to solve puzzles, or use them to fight other enemies, or maybe possess them. I don't know, something crazy like that. I think that would be a lot of fun. Trio the Punch asks, considering that he has been absent from the last 3 entries in the series, do you think it is likely that Zelda Wii U will feature Ganon as the main villain, or do you think that the developers might decide to keep their Ganny-less streak going? Well, you know, I don't think that it's something they necessarily consider. I think they put him in when they can and when they think it'll work for the game, but I definitely think they deviate from that when they think it'll fit the game better. I don't really mind having games without him. I like them coming up with original villains. I really like Bellum. He's like a friggin' squid Cthulhu monster thing. And I really like some of the other characters. I thought Demise, though very similar to Ganon, was kind of awesome. But, you know, I actually don't have any preference on whether he's there or not. I don't know what they'll do, and I don't think they have a preference either, particularly. Though, granted, he's the main villain of the series, so they'll use him sometime. But I think that given the probability of this, the last few games didn't have him, so I think that chances are he's going to reappear again pretty soon, if not in the next couple of games. Juicy J asks, do you think it would be cool to have returning to dungeons used in the place of mini-dungeons in future Zelda titles? I know the return to Skyview and Skyward Sword was sort of a mini-dungeon, but there wasn't anything legitimately new involved, which would, of course, need to be how this aspect is executed. I think, yeah, you know, I like the idea of returning to Skyview Temple. I thought it was really cool that you had the idea of re-exploring the previous area, and I think that what sucks is the fact that they executed it so poorly because you re-explore it, but there's, as you said, nothing new. Though I think that there's something to be said for redefining an area, changing it so it's just a lot different to go through, but it's not really different otherwise. But I think also adding new areas and the idea of exploring it again, because it's an adventure game, come on. Exploring a dungeon and finding new stuff in it that you couldn't find before, and having to do this as part of the game, I think that's a great idea, and I think it really would be very Zelda. And I think that I think that they should do that in future games. My only, the only thing I would add to that is that they shouldn't do it for every dungeon. It shouldn't be like the main gimmick of the game. I don't like it when dungeons all have to follow some kind of gimmick and they have to have this set standard and how all the dungeons work in every dungeon of the game. I mean, I loved it in Skyward Sword how you had those like, what is it, geometry puzzles instead of the boss keys, but I didn't like it that was all of them. I actually like Twilight Princess for that because it did differ on the boss key things somewhat, at least in how you collect them, and I thought that was great. I'd like some variety in it. Defeat Deception asks, how would you feel about a Zelda game ending in a cliffhanger, and the next game, or even one after that, picks up where this left off? There's technically nothing wrong with it. It would be interesting for the storytelling, and it's not bad writing or anything. But on some level, I wouldn't like it personally because I miss the Zelda game. Well, I miss how the Zelda series used to be a little bit, or at least how I perceived it before, like, the timeline stuff got, I became acutely aware of all the timeline theorizing, and before the Hyrule Historia thing, where each Zelda game was really a very self-contained story, and they didn't need to connect. There was no reason to connect the games. I guess I don't mind it that they do, because the games are still very standalone tales that can just do their own thing independent of the timeline. Sort of like the Final Fantasy series, though not quite, and they do still have connections. But I think that I still would prefer that it stay that way in the sense that future games don't have that complete reliance on each other. I like the idea of them exploring the lore of other games, but not so much the idea of them continuing the same story. I like them, they feel like different worlds. I guess if it happened once, I wouldn't mind, but I wouldn't like it to become like a regular thing in this series or anything like that. Ansel22 asks, would you like to see the old items of Zelda, such as the hookshot, hammer, magic wand, and mirror shield, make a comeback, or do you think Nintendo should keep making new and improved ones? This is actually something where I don't think that they should do anything specific. It's another thing like what I said earlier about having variety. I like the current trend in most of the recent Zelda games of having a couple repeat items from previous games, a couple modified items, the same thing but changed to be very different, and a couple of, of completely new stuff. And I think that balancing these three things is ideal. I don't think going with any one of those is perfect for a Zelda game. I think it's when they do all three, or at least two of them, that it's pretty cool. That's what I like to see in future Zelda games. Ninja Stud asks, if the Hylians are the chosen race of the goddesses, why don't they have a pearl or gem to open the door to the Master Sword, but the lesser races do, like the Gorons and Zora or Koroks and Rito? They didn't want to bother with it? Because they're too important? I don't know. Actually, there's no explanation for this, but I always like to think of it as just they changed hands. At least in Ocarina of Time. In the Wind Waker, they're pretty much stated to have belonged to the deities that each of the races dealt with or worshipped. So that's kind of like they were given to gods, not to any mortal creature at all. They just happened to have they just happened to be patron gods. I guess that's all I have to say there. Darkest Link asks, in the Wind Waker, Link's grandma tells him kids wear the green tunic when they reach the same age as the hero of legend. This would mean the Wind Waker takes place on the child timeline. The King of Red Lions also briefly speaks of the previous Link disappearing and the Triforce splitting. This would also mean the Wind Waker takes place on the child timeline. So why is the Wind Waker placed on the adult timeline? Well, the Triforce splitting thing, that happened in the adult timeline. That's after Link defeat that it's involved with Ganon coming to power and Link having to defeat him. As for the hero of legend, he saved Hyrule on the adult timeline. The adult timeline is what happened after adult Link defeated Ganon. So that's adult timeline stuff. I'm not sure what you're talking about there. Sorry, guys. Indiana Jones asks, who is the Twilight Princess? Zelda, Midna, or both of them? Midna is the Twilight Princess, Princess of the Twilight Realm. There's a line where she calls Zelda a Twilight Princess, but that was just like a thing she was saying as some kind of cruel joke about Zelda being the princess of the now Twilight-covered Hyrule. And I honestly think developers just put this in to confuse you. So mission accomplished. Sorry. AC Station 99 asks, what would you think if Nintendo were to make a game that had Demise brought back by Ganondorf and Link had to stop him? I think it would be awesome. What do you think? Well, undoubtedly awesome, though it wouldn't necessarily make a lot of sense, though Demise kind of breaks the rules, so I don't know. But, You know, I think that something like this could only like be a good idea if the game featured a Link that had appeared in a like had already fought Ganon. Like if they were to use Ocarina of Time Link or Wind Waker Link or something like that. I think that's the only time that would be particularly interesting, because otherwise it's just like a fan fiction thing almost. Like it's just like, let's put all the cool guys in there. But if they had done it in a way where it was a Link who had previously defeated Ganon, and people who are already aware of Ganon and his whole thing, it would be interesting because it would show like what Ganon's origins were. That would be kind of fascinating, and then it might be a cool idea, I might agree. If we have another game where they reuse one of those links, that could be cool. Alright, last question. Mr. L500 asks, are all the bad guys such as Vati and Malladus in the Zelda series a result of Demise's curse, or is Ganon Ganondorf the only one? No, they're not all. Alright guys, that's it for this time. Be sure to send your questions to the contact page in the description, and I'll see you guys later. Darkest Link asks, in the Wind Waker, Link's grandma tells him that kids were... Speaks of Link going to Termina and the Triforce splintering. Ninja Stud asks, if the Hylian are the chosen race of the goddesses, why do they have a pearl or gem to open the door to the... Why don't... God... Please tell me someone got this. You know, you got me. Stone of Agony.